and my heart be ever mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Amen. Would you please be seated? We're going to have fun this morning. We're going to talk about adultery. We're going to talk about murder. We're going to talk about pornography. We're going to talk about all the sorts of things that you don't normally talk about at 10:30 on Sunday mornings. We're going to talk about real life. And I want to talk to you about our Old Testament reading from the book of Samuel, the story of David and Bathsheba. But before I do, I want to mention I was out sick most of this past week or so. I wound up in the hospital for 5 days. I had sepsis, and I was in delirium for 2 or 3 days, and then flat my back for a few days, and so I had a lot of time to think. And I couldn't read very well. I couldn't find my glasses. I couldn't watch TV, and if I did read, it had to be this close. But some of the things I looked at, I just found some interesting things to look at. One of them was about one of my favorite comedy TV series. It's from England. It's called Father Ted. It's a series that was made about 20-odd years ago. And I was reading about how the authors came up with the story. If you're not familiar with the series, Father Ted is about 3 priests who serve a parish off the coast of Ireland in a little out of the way place, sort of the Okeechobee of Ireland, the place where bad priests are sent. And the 3 priests, the authors wanted to have the priests sort of be iconic and deal with the 3 besetting sins that affect the clergy. So the first character, the main character, is called Father Ted. Father Ted's about my age, and Father Ted's problem is money. The horses. Oh, I meant to move the moment money into the orphanage fund. It's just resting in my bank account. Father Ted's fingers are a little too sticky. And that was one of the recurring themes of the show, Father Ted getting in trouble with money. And what is one of the things that ruin priests? Money! That's one of the besetting problems of the clergy. The second priest is Father Jack. And Father Jack's problem was booze. And in fact, during the entire series, every single time Father Jack was on the screen, he was drunk. And they had a continuing storyline about Father Jack's problems with alcohol. Of course, what is the second problem that besets the clergy? Money, booze is number 2. Then they had number 3, and they decided to punt. What is the third besetting sin of the clergy? Booze, sex, money, women, and little boys too. Instead of having the third priest, Father Dougal, be a pervert, they had Father Dougal be an idiot. Now, this is an English series about Ireland, and the English treat the Irish sort of the way in America we have shows about the Beverly Hillbillies or the Dukes of Hazzard. So the Irish are always treated as being rather thick and stupid and not quite all there. And so they gave up on that last issue, not talking about sex, because as the author said, we just couldn't make a funny series. You can make something funny about a crooked priest. You can make something funny about a drunk priest. But you can't make something funny about a perverted priest. Sex and money and booze are besetting sins of the clergy. Have always been such. In fact, if you've been watching the newspapers, you will probably read something that is quite horrifying if you're a Roman Catholic. The Cardinal Archbishop, retired of Washington, Theodore McCarrick, is going to be laicized. What does that mean? He's going to be kicked out of the clergy. Bishop McCarrick was molesting seminarians when he was a bishop in New Jersey. 17, 16, 17, 18-year-old boys he would invite to his apartment, he would molest them. And then he would promote them in the ministry. And so he surrounded himself with a coterie of like-minded homosexuals. And the scandal is, who knew this and when? That that the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, one of the most important jobs in the American Catholic Church, was headed up for over 10 years by a promiscuous homosexual. That's not funny. How do you make a TV show funny out of something like that? Well, let's not just blame the Catholics here. If you're in England and reading the newspapers, they're going through something entirely the same from the Church of England, our sister church in that country. George Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, has been appearing before a commission, a panel. Now, I know George Carey well enough to call him George. I've known him for over 20 years. I'm very close friends with his son Andrew, and George is 85 years old, and he's a lovely man. He's a godly man. He's a kind man. He helped me when I needed help in my ministry. And George Carey is an English success story. George was born in Dagenham, which is in East London, the East End, and not a nice place. His father made a living pushing a wheelbarrow around the markets of London. And this is somebody who is now Lord Carey of Clifton. He has risen to the top. He has been as far as you can go in the English world, rising from the son of a porter, market porter in the East End of London, through education, through hard work. And George Carey is now before a commission because of another bishop named Peter Ball. Peter Ball was one of the high flyers of the Church of England. Peter Ball is tall, he's good looking, he's athletic. He won his varsity blue, as they call him, his letter, at Cambridge in squash and in rugby. He's the sort of guy who gets up in the morning, takes a cold shower, does push-ups. He was a dynamic priest. He founded his own order of Franciscans who worked among the poor in the inner cities of London. Even though he went to Eton and Cambridge and was related to this Chief Justice and to that Duke, this was somebody who gave himself utterly to the care of the people. And he became a bishop, and he created a course where young boys who finished high school before they went to college, if they wanted to explore the ministry, could spend a year, give a year to God, working in amongst the poor and the deprived. Well, George Carey started receiving letters he received 6 letters from some of the boys and some of their parents, saying that Peter Ball was molesting them. Peter Ball would have these young boys live in his palace, and he would molest them. And George Carey said, "This can't be true! The man's an athlete! He's a gentleman, he's a bishop, it's impossible!" And I asked him, he said he didn't do it, therefore I'm not paying any attention. George Carey made a stupid mistake because people complained, but he couldn't believe because this man, a manly sort of guy, said, "I didn't do it. I don't know why these people are lying about me." Well, this week George Carey was asked to account because Peter Ball eventually was caught and served 3 years in prison for child abuse, a bishop. And George Carey was asked, "Why didn't you do anything?" And George Carey gave a really dumb excuse. He said, "I was trying to help Princess Diana through a divorce at the time." Okay, George, sorry, that's not the answer. That's not the answer we were hoping to hear you. But his answer was, "I just couldn't believe a bishop would do this." Now, what it says to me is George may be kind, he may be good, he may be bright academically, but he has no sense of human beings. Because it doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are, how great you are in the eyes of the world, sin is sin and destruction. This happens everywhere. You have people beating their wives in the poorest of the poor and in the richest of the rich suburbs. You have perverts across the board. All of it's hidden. And to say, "Well, this man's a bishop, he couldn't possibly do it," is so naive. Well, where does it all come down to? What am I trying to do? Am I just trying to depress you on a Sunday morning? I want to talk to you about our reading from the Old Testament. Because we're talking about the same sin. It's the sin of lust. It's a sin of denial. There's a passage from the book of Proverbs that says, idle hands are the devil's workshop. What does that mean? It means that you get in trouble in this life, not when you are completely overwhelmingly busy, but when you got time in your hands. When you got time in your hands, that's when Satan strikes. Why? Because as the psalmist tells us, we are corrupt and broken and evil people. And our natural inclination is not to do the good, but to do the evil. And if we're left to our own devices, guess what happens? Not good things. Our story this morning opens. David is my age. He's in his mid-50s, late 40s. He has been king long enough that he is at the top of his game. He is so powerful that he can send the army out and do its job. He doesn't have to go anymore. David has reached the point where he can delegate everything that needs to be done because he is powerful, he is secure, he is successful. And our passage opens, it's the spring and the army has been sent out to the field to fight the Hittites and the Hizzites and the Hivites, whoever. And David is taking an afternoon nap and he's bored. And he wakes up and he looks out and what does he see? He sees Bathsheba. Now, on our bulletin we have two illustrations. On the cover we have David and Bathsheba by Artemisia Gentileschi. Artemisia Gentileschi was one of the first women Renaissance prominent painters. And you notice David doesn't appear in this photo, in this picture she painted. And you can sort of sense where Artemisia is laying the blame in this story. The ladies' maids surrounding Bathsheba are going, oh, let's get this over with quick, someone will see. But here we have Bathsheba going, ha, look at me. Whereas the ladies' maids all around are going, this is going to lead to trouble. So, who's the villain in this story? David? He's not even in the picture. And maybe Bathsheba sort of, maybe wanted to do something. Now open up to the inside photo. We have Bathsheba by Jean-Léon Giraud, French, well he's a Frenchman of course. And what do we have? We have Bathsheba elected, oh hang on! Standing on stage, doing the naked. And who do you have in the upper left-hand corner doing the wolf whistle from the patio? David. So you can sort of see where Jean-Léon is taking this story. She's leading the guy on. Well, what do this story tell us? David sees this woman bathing on a rooftop in the middle of the day, in the late afternoon. He's bored. He's had his late afternoon nap. It's not time for dinner. There's nothing on the tube. He looks out, he sees a naked girl, and he says, who's that girl? Well, this is a married man, by the way. And somebody finds out, oh, that's Bathsheba, Uriah the Hittite's wife. Well, ask her to come over. And does it say, and Bathsheba, oh no, I'm a married woman. I couldn't possibly come over after you haven't seen me naked. No. She comes over. The next thing we know, that David lay with Bathsheba, knowing her in the biblical sense. And then we find time passes by, and guess who's having a baby? Well, her husband Uriah is one of David's officers. Now that's a problem. Why is it a problem? Well, the penalty for adultery is stoning to death. And you don't get out of it because you're king. David and Bathsheba are liable to be stoned if Uriah wants to bring a case. And this is one of his officers. If you want to be king, who do you not mess with? The officer corps of the army that keeps you in power. If the army knows that while they're at the front fighting for your empire, you're sleeping with their wives, you're not going to be king for very long, are you? So David and Bathsheba cook up a plan, a plot. They're going to days off, be with your wife, have fun, and just, I'm so proud of you, so we can palm this baby off on you. Well, Uriah's a bit of a Dudley-do-right sort of guy. While my men are in the field, and the battle is yet to be won, I will not accept comfort. And I will sleep here at the door of the king's palace to show my loyalty. Oh, this guy's really annoying. He's not playing along. So day one passes, and David's scratching his head. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to get him drunk. Got to get him drunk and then send him home in a wheelbarrow to his house, and then we can say, oh, it happened then. Well, Uriah, he holds his liquor. He doesn't get drunk, and he says, I will stay and serve my king. And David says, okay, the hell with it. And he writes a letter to the head of the army and gives it to Uriah to give to him and says, next time you go over the top, next time you leave the trenches, I want Uriah to lead the charge, but I don't want anybody to follow. I want Uriah dead. And so Uriah the Hittite, what began with lust on a hot afternoon when David was bored, has led to murder. Friends, I want to talk to you about the lust. I want to talk about pornography. Because this is what we're talking about today. One of the most destructive things in our society today is the spread of pornography. Now, we're all roughly of the same generation, except for baby here. When I was a boy in the 60s and 70s, if you wanted to buy a dirty book, you had to find somebody who was 21 years old to go to the 7-Eleven. It was as difficult as buying beer, and more expensive. And when you finally got it, if you look at it today, it looks like a Calvin Klein's underwear ad. It's not that big of a deal. And National Geographic, you can go to the library, look at the other Booger women, and National Geographic. That was it. Today, any 12-year-old can pick up their cell phone and see a degree of filth for free that is just abominable. And what's happening is that it is destroying the moral fiber of our country. What's happening? We've got the majority of 12-year-old boys have seen pornography on the internet. The majority. They're not old enough to date. They're not old enough to know girls. I mean, they're going to have to wait 6, 7, 8 years before they actually have a relationship with women. And all that time they're fed with a steady diet of filth. And so that when they finally meet girls, what do they think of girls? That they're objects. They're things you do to them. And their whole understanding of sex, which is one of God's greatest gifts to humanity, is totally corrupted. Rather than being mutual, rather than being loving, rather than being affirming, because of the influx of pornography into the lives of our children, they're being warped. Just as David is warped. I'm not saying that everybody who picks up a dirty book is going to wind up with assisting in murder. But what I am saying, it is going to coarsen our hearts, coarsen our culture. And I'm not just talking about kids. I remember 20-odd years ago when I had a parish in Sebastian, I would visit one of our older members of the congregation. He was going blind. He could only see out of the sides of his eyes. And he and his wife had been married over 50 years, and she was so distraught because when they would go to bed, she would go to sleep, he would go back into the TV room, they had cable TV, and he would watch dirty movies. He had never done this, all through their marriage. But now, in his advanced state of diabetes and blindness and nothing's worth, he had become so addicted to pornography in his 80s that it was destroying his marriage of 50 years. Because his wife was no longer the love of his life, his helpmeet, that person that had been there forever, she was an object. Pornography is not a kid's problem. It's a problem for everybody. For individuals whose lives and relationships are destroyed, and for our culture and our country who are losing the gift of love. Where does love come in? Where does romance come in? Where does that mutual joy of husband and wife come in a world that is raised on dirty pictures? And folks, this is not a modern problem. This is David's problem. David is bored. David needs to be entertained. Idle hands have led him into the devil's workshop, and he's got a live show to watch. And it leads him into the pit of murder and death and adultery. Friends, sex is, I've said this once, I'll say it again, sex is one of God's greatest gifts to us. It is one of the joys of this life, but it can be so easily broken and warped and made wrong when it is taken out of its proper context. Well, what do we do about it? I don't. Except for I don't point hands. I don't see anybody's got a problem with pictures around here. I shouldn't even tease on this because it's that serious. How do we live in a world that's going that way? Do we stand at the corner of North Bryan Highway and go off the lake with a megaphone and a placard and make ourselves obnoxious? That's not going to do much, is it? We'll get suntanned, but that's about all. What do we do in a world that is broken? A world that is suffering and afflicted by sin? Do we hector? Do we nag? Do we yell? Do we wag our fingers? Doesn't do any good, does it? If you tried that with your kids, did it work with them? Maybe under the age of 8, but not when they're older. Certainly not going to work with strangers. I'll tell you what does it. And that is leading a life focused and centered on Jesus Christ. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I had the same roommate the entire time. Man must be a Mormon because that guy had so many kids and so many relatives. And from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, there was at least 25 people in that room every day. And I felt like saying, don't you have jobs? Don't you have homes? Go away! I mean, he was a pleasant enough guy, but his family, and he wasn't going to die. I don't know why they had to hang around. It wasn't like Daddy Warlock and about the Will Grandpa. It wasn't like that. But in the evenings, we would talk, and I didn't say anything. And I didn't start off by being a holy Joe and let me tell you about how you're going to make your life better. I wasn't selling aluminum siding or anything. We got to know each other, and I was polite, and I was affirming, and I was kind, and I did what I could to make his stay as good as it could be, given the fact that I was flat in my back. Well, I got to know him, and he turned out he was a retired policeman. He had served up in Ohio, and he had moved down here when he retired. He and his wife, and most of their family was down here now. And as I got to know him better, he sort of asked me, why you're so happy? Why are you happy? And I would jokingly say, oh, well, if you got as much stuff going into your arm as I do, of course you're going to be happy. He said, no, I've got as much stuff going into my arm, and I'm not happy. And I said, it's because God loves me. Well, he said, you know, I'm a Christian. I mean, my wife goes to church. And I'll go on Christmas and Easter, and whenever somebody dies, and maybe, weddings and funerals, but I just don't feel it. And he proceeded to tell me a story. 30, 40 years ago, this guy's in his mid-80s. He and his partner were on patrol. They did a traffic stop. They got out, and the guy behind the wheel pulled out a gun, shot his partner to death, and shot him. The bullet went through his head. And he returned fire and killed the suspect, killed the man. His partner had 3 children. He was unmarried at the time. And he said, I don't understand why that night I went to the passenger door and my partner went to the driver door. I don't understand why a traffic stop, it wasn't like a bank robbery or a liquor store heist, it was a traffic stop. For something like a taillight or something stupid. Why did he
said, I can't answer that question. But I do know that God gave you a reason for that. Were you an honest policeman? Yes. Yes, I was honest. It was hard to be honest, but I was honest. I didn't rise to captain. I didn't do the things that I needed to do, but I did my job, and I was fair, and I was honest, and I didn't hurt anybody, and I kept clean. God gave you that mission in life. God gave you a task to serve your community in honesty and in integrity. And God loves you. And you don't have to do a thing about it. All you have to do is believe. Accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You don't have to earn His trust. You don't have to earn His trust. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is open your heart. Now, maybe I should get a notch in my belt or something, but the guy's not going back to the Baptist church, so it was a waste of time. But my point is, folks, in your life, you will meet people who you know nothing about their life, nothing about their past. And they will want to know what is different about you. That you have that knowledge and love of Jesus Christ. You don't have all the answers. You don't know why somebody lived. You don't know why somebody died. You don't know any of these answers. No one ever will. But you know what to do, which is to love and to care and to be kind and to encourage. Someone who falls into pornography, someone who falls into it, if you have a buddy or a friend who's fallen into adultery, the urge is to beat the crap out of them and tell them to stop it, but it doesn't work. You've got to lead them out of the valley of death through love. Now that's so very hard. And it's not immediate, but you have to be patient. And you have to love as Christ loved us. Friends, what am I telling you this morning? First, don't read dirty books. Don't be idle. Don't allow your leisure time to turn into destruction. Be confident in your God and in the gifts of life He's given you. And reach out to the stranger, to your neighbor, to your friends, to your spouse, in love. It doesn't take being a member of the trade union to bring people to Jesus Christ. It takes love. Each of you. Our church teaches in its catechism. And Darby, you're going to have to memorize this in about a year or two, so beware. Each of us are ministers of the gospel. Each of us are called to share this good news. And we do it in ways that work for us. But everybody has a common way, which is love. Love the people around you. Love the world. Seek to lead them by your example. Don't expect miracles to happen overnight. But know that the power of Christ will overcome everything. So love. Don't buy dirty magazines.